Steve Cohen, and it's my honor to introduce our speaker this evening. Before I do, I want to take a moment just to thank Reverend Mark Richardson over there, and the members of the First United Methodist Church who have been hosting us here for this service for quite a few years now. And Mark, thank you for organizing us this evening. Thank you so much. Those of us that have been in town for a while now may have come to realize that we are fortunate in this city to have had great religious leadership in many, many different communities and actually coming together from time to time. And in fact, the religious leaders that are here this evening are a wonderful, wonderful collection of representatives from many, not all, but many of our religious communities here in Santa Barbara. But I'd like to observe that over the years there have been a few people, a few religious leaders in Santa Barbara who, because of the breadth of their vision, the greatness of their heart, the power of the prophetic voice in them, have come to be embraced by the whole community. And I'm thinking of Father Virgil Cordano, Reverend Lloyd Sachin, who was the guy here for many, many years, Reverend Mark Asman, who just retired. These individuals, for whatever reasons, and I think it's kind of mysterious, have come to be more than just the leader for their own community, but in a way, kind of the vicar of Santa Barbara. As far as I know, it's an unpaid position. And I would like to observe this evening that Reverend Julia Hamilton, who only just came a few years ago and only has been serving as the lead minister of the Unitarian Society since July of 2015, feels to me like she's our new vicar of Santa Barbara. You can refer to the last page of your service program to see Julia's biography, but I want to close my introduction by reading the words that she has chosen to put on her website and at the bottom of her biography. Words from William Sloane Coffin. "The world is too dangerous for anything but truth, and too small for anything but love." And I think that in that selection, Julia has chosen some words that really capture who she is for all of us. Julia.
It's a great honor to be here this evening among all of you fine people. On Thursday, November 3rd, I woke in the pre-dawn hours to the sound of a man's voice coming over the public address system at the Oceti-Shakowin camp at Standing Rock, North Dakota. I was in my tent and it was very cold. I took the earplugs out of my ears. I was wearing earplugs because there's a surveillance plane that circles endlessly over the camp all day and most of the night as well, and it's very loud. And the first night I didn't get much sleep because I left my earplugs in the car, foolishly thinking that the plane would sleep too. It did not. And on this, my second morning at the camp, I had already learned so much. I was there because I had answered the call for interfaith clergy to come and participate in an act of religious witness, in solidarity with the Standing Rock Sioux, as they seek to stop the construction of an oil pipeline that threatens their water supply and destroys their sacred land. "Wake up," the man on the PA said. Wake up, Standing Rock. Today is going to be a good day. Wake up. We are here for a purpose. The water is warm today, he said. He was referencing what I had just witnessed the day before, when many of the water protectors, as the people at Standing Rock are called, had gathered on the banks of a small tributary of the Cannonball River, while dozens of people waded across the water toward the line of police in full riot gear, waiting on the other side. I watched as people stood side by side in the cold water in front of at least 50 police officers. They were unarmed and often bare-shouldered, and they were attempting to cross over to make prayers on the top of a hill that was on the other side of the bank. On top of that sacred hill was now an armored police vehicle, and more people in military gear, rifles visible. I watched as tear gas exploded around the people in the water, and the police fired beanbag rounds, which hit the people in the water as well as some of those of us gathered on the opposite bank, including a reporter who was at that time filming a video. What I saw with my own eyes does not match the official police reporting of that morning. This is what happened on the first morning that I was there. But back to the second morning, when the man on the PA continued, "The sun will be coming up soon. It's time to wake up. Sun dancers, pipe carriers, smudge your pipes. Christians, shine your crosses. Look around and be grateful. Today is going to be a good day." And he began then to sing and offer prayers in his native language, prayers for the morning, prayers for strength, prayers in gratitude for the earth, for all of creation and all people. This is how each day at Ochedishakoin camp begins, with prayers, with gratitude, with a reminder that there is work to be done in this world. I poked my head out of the tent and noticed the frost. It was unseasonably warm for the beginning of November. Everyone at camp was talking about how strange the weather was. There was no snow yet, just frost. And the sky was full dark, with stars shining overhead. But it was never really dark in the camp because there are giant floodlights on top of the hills between the camp and the construction site. It feels like a scene from a movie at times, with these giant, huge lights, like at a stadium, burning all night long, and the plane buzzing constantly overhead. It feels like a movie, but this is no movie. This is the life and times we are living in. And we clergy had come to bear witness, and in some small way, begin to make amends for the centuries of hurt and harm that had been done in the name of the church. We've been called together by John Sloberg, an Episcopal priest who has lived and worked in Standing Rock for over 25 years. Working with the Standing Rock tribe, he sent out an invitation, a rather last-minute invitation, to be honest. We had about a week and a half's notice before he wanted us there, but it spread very quickly across social media. Clergy colleagues, he reached out, he said, "Clergy colleagues, something important is happening here, and we need to be here to see it." They expected maybe 100 people to show up. They could feed that many, they could put them in the gym in Cannonball. But over 500 people answered the call, representing 24 different faiths from over 45 states and 3 countries. They had to make a lot more sandwiches than they planned. I sat with the invitation for about 24 hours. I looked up the cost of plane tickets to Bismarck. I looked at my schedule for the next week, and then I called my husband, and I will be forever grateful that the first words out of his mouth were, "Go. We'll be fine here." This interfaith gathering, which I had thought was just going to be an act of witness and solidarity, turned into something much, much more. It's important to understand that this is not just about a pipeline. This is not a political movement. It is not just an environmental movement even. It is a spiritual movement. The elders at Standing Rock are very clear that the camp is a place of ceremony, that every action is a prayer for the water, for the earth, even for the police officers and their families, because we are all human beings. They remind us over and over again. We are praying for everyone. The water protectors at Standing Rock are committed to nonviolent, prayerful resistance. We clergy were arriving by the hundreds that day, but before we had come, over 300 tribes had already sent their official support, and many had sent delegations, including the Chumash here in Santa Barbara just a few months ago, bringing supplies and prayers with them. Standing Rock is one of the most spirit-infused places I have ever been. That morning we gathered. We were Episcopal, Methodist, Lutheran, United Church of Christ, Unitarian Universalist, Roman Catholic, Old Catholic, Latter-day Saints, Baptist, Buddhist, Presbyterian, Quaker, Disciples of Christ, non-denominational Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Reformed, Wiccan, and Mennonite. We were going to march out to the bridge across Highway 1806, where the police were maintaining a roadblock and where people had been arrested just the week before. It's the same bridge where 2 nights ago we saw people being hosed down with water in freezing temperatures. It was that bridge. But before we marched out onto that bridge on Highway 1806 to sing and pray and share stories, first we gathered in a circle around the sacred fire at the camp, and that fire has been burning continuously since April. And there, in front of tribal elders, we gathered to officially repudiate the Doctrine of Discovery. Now, the Doctrine of Discovery doesn't get a lot of press these days. But this moment at Standing Rock has its roots way, way back in the history of the relationship between indigenous people and Western colonial powers. The Doctrine of Discovery, established in the 15th century, it's still here with us today. It articulated that belief that because there were no Christians in the Western Hemisphere, that any land that was discovered there was up for grabs. It was formulated after a series of papal decrees and treaties between Spain and Portugal. It was this collaboration between the Christian church and the empires of the time. And it predates the Reformation, so if those of us from Protestant roots think that it gets us off the hook, think again, because after the Reformation, it was one of the things that the Protestants decided they were going to keep. The Doctrine of Discovery had a great influence on the founding of the United States, and it became the basis for much of federal property law. And in fact, the U.S. Supreme Court cited the doctrine in their decisions as recently as 2005. It is an old, old system, but it still lives with us. And anyone who is part of a religious community knows that old stories have power, and that traditions and theologies live within us, for better or for worse, for a really long time. It can be tempting to dismiss this all as history, as water under the bridge, but as we can see in Standing Rock today, the water carries our history with it, and we cannot cross over without coming to a better understanding of where we have been. Many of our traditions have begun only recently acknowledging this history. In 2009, the Episcopal Church was the first to pass a resolution repudiating the Doctrine of Discovery. My own tradition, Unitarian Universalism, passed such a resolution in 2012. The The United Methodist Church, the United Church of Christ, the Mennonite Church, the Religious Society of Friends, and the World Council of Churches have all taken a stand just within the past few years. And just earlier this year, even the Catholic Church signaled that it might be willing to open up the conversation. This is new work for us. This is brand new work for us, not even a decade in the making. And a decade is a blink of an eye in a religious tradition. It's new work, rising up against this doctrine that has been in place for over 500 years. And this is truly interfaith work. This is work that is going to require all of us. And that's why I'm so glad to be able to share these experiences here tonight. Because whether you come from a Christian religious tradition or another path, we're all living here today in this nation. We're all part of this nation that was founded in part on this idea that land is for the taking, for the exploiting, rather than for the protecting and the stewarding. It will take our most loving hearts and our sharpest theological minds and our most spiritually grounded leadership, and I don't just mean ordained clergy, but I mean spiritually grounded leadership that lives among us. It will take all of this to change our course. And we can begin by listening, by truly listening to the indigenous people who are on the front lines. They are trying to stop a pipeline, true. There's a very concrete goal to this work. But they are also reminding us over and over again that we should be protecting the earth instead of protecting profit. And so standing there before the elders, reading aloud the repudiation of this destructive and hurtful theology, and I have a copy of the statement. If anybody wants to read it, it'll be available after the service. This is a first step, not the end of the journey. It's the gesture towards a new way of being, of sharing this earth with each other, with our indigenous relatives, with an acknowledgement that we have to do this work together to survive together. The people of Standing Rock are still calling out. The pipeline was originally proposed to run north of Bismarck, but one of the reasons why it was moved south was because it was feared that a break would cause too much damage to that city. And so they've done what they have so often done and offloaded the risk onto the reservation. And we here in Santa Barbara, we know that pipelines leak. We know that oil spills. We know that new pipelines become old pipelines. And we know that our children are the ones that we are sacrificing if we don't do something. And there is still time to make a difference, to respond to the call of our diverse faiths to work toward a more sustainable world. Chief Arvo Looking Horse, a spiritual leader of the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota nations, who just came through Santa Barbara this past weekend, has asked us all as people of faith to keep coming to Standing Rock, to keep bearing witness, to keep seeking out the news from people who've actually been there. Not secondhand stories, but the news reports from people who are actually witnessing this to understand what's going on. And this is what he said. The hearts of all people's faiths must now unite in believing we can change the path we are now on. We are asking the religious people to come and support our youth, to stand side by side with them, because they are standing in prayer. If you can find it in your heart, pray with them and stand beside them. The police department and National Guard would listen to each and every one of you. This is a very serious time we are in. I know in my heart there are millions of people that feel this is long overdue. It is time that all of us become leaders to help protect the sacred upon Mother Earth. She is the source of life and not a resource. In a sacred poop of life where there is no ending and no beginning. Those are the words from Chief Looking Horse calling us. And so as we gather around our harvest tables this week, let us keep Standing Rock in our prayers. And as the events there unfold in the coming time, may the spirit of gratitude and compassion be extended to all indigenous peoples of the world. May it encompass the police as well as the water protectors. May gratitude soften our hearts and open our eyes. And may the beauty of all life renew our faith. May it be so. Blessed be and amen.